Today, we're venturing into some really fascinating and, let's be honest, pretty complex territory.
Definitely.
It's all based on sources one of you actually sent in focusing on alien theories and this idea of a new world order.
Yeah, we've got transcripts involving Eddie Bravo and also the full audiobook of William Cooper's Behold a Pale Horse. Quite a mix.
It really is. And just to be clear up front, our mission here isn't to, decide what's true or not.
No, not at all.
It's more about really digging into the core arguments, the ideas being presented in this material.
Exactly. These sources, they offer just a huge range of viewpoints, right? You've got personal takes alongside claims presented as, well, deeply researched.
Though often sparking a lot of debate.
Oh, absolutely. So what we want to do is unpack the main ideas for you, try to spot the patterns and, see what key insights or maybe just important questions really emerge.
Right. And right at the start, Eddie Bravo throws out that classic what if, doesn't he?
Uh-huh. The alien attack scenario.
Yeah, aliens attack and boom, the world suddenly unites. He kind of hints that maybe that's the real goal behind a lot of things.
And then he points straight to William Cooper.
He does, suggesting Cooper thought, well, maybe the whole alien thing could be a setup, like a staged invasion.
A fake alien invasion, yeah. To bring about this new world order.
Okay, so let's unpack Cooper. He seems central to a lot of this. What were his main arguments?
Well, Cooper is definitely a key figure in these sources. He wasn't just saying aliens exist. He was claiming a massive cover-up.
By governments and secret societies.
Exactly. And a core part of his argument, like you said, is this idea of a planned fake alien invasion.
Okay.
He suggests this manufactured threat would basically scare everyone into accepting a single world government, the New World Order.
A crisis? Real or maybe not real, used to grab power. Yeah. It makes sense as a theory.
That's the framework he presents.
Right, and he gets specific about who he thinks is behind it. He mentions something called the Brotherhood of the Snake.
Or the Brotherhood of the Dragon, yeah.
Doesn't sound like your average book club.
No, definitely not. Cooper paints this as a really ancient secret society.
Uh-huh.
He traces it way back through history, believes it's still operating today, just, under different names.
And their whole deal is?
He claims they're devoted to Lucifer and that they hold this profound ancient knowledge.
Okay.
The story he tells is that this knowledge, it gets shared but only selectively, and they use it supposedly for mankind's benefit, but all in total secrecy.
The classic hidden hand idea.
Pretty much. Guiding things based on secrets no one else knows.
It's interesting, though, he tries to make it relatable.
Right.
Linking this huge secret society idea to just the everyday human desire to be in exclusive clubs.
That's a really key part of how he builds his case, yeah. He points to that common feeling, wanting to belong, wanting exclusivity, and uses that to try and make these, grand secret societies seem a bit more plausible, just on a massive scale.
Of much higher stakes.
Exactly. And then he connects that idea to groups people might have actually heard of, like the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR.
Ah, yes, the CFR. So according to Cooper, this isn't just some think tank.
No, he presents it as way more powerful, basically controlling U.S. foreign policy for, over 50 years.
And here's where, according to him, it gets really layered. He says the CFR itself is run by an elite group tied to those famous secret societies at Harvard and Yale.
He names them specifically Skull and Bones and Scroll and Key. He suggests they're basically secret branches of the Illuminati.
The Illuminati. Okay, so in Cooper's view, not just some historical footnote.
Not at all. He presents it as this ongoing, powerful force manipulating world events. And he claims members of this group, the Illuminati, form the core of the CFR, especially an inner circle he calls the Order of the Quest.
Or the Jason Society.
Right. So it's like, Russian nesting dolls of secrecy. Each layer hides a more powerful group inside.
Layers within layers, all working in the shadows.
Yeah.
And he describes a structure for the CFR itself, doesn't he?
He does. He talks about an inner executive committee, these Order of the Quest folks who are really pulling the strings, setting the agenda.
Okay.
And then there's a bigger outer circle of CFR members. They might not know everything, but they're influenced.
How so?
Through things like, persuasion, getting jobs or funding, social pressure. He even points to Henry Kissinger getting an early grant from Rockefeller as an example how it works.
The implication being, play ball or you don't get ahead.
Pretty much. If you want to climb the ladder in those circles, you toe the line.
And the ultimate goal of all this cloak and dagger stuff.
The New World Order, of course.
Naturally. He even traces the CFR back, says it started with the British Royal Institute of International Affairs, funded by big banking interests.
That's his claim, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Portraying the CFR as the U.S. arm of this bigger international network.
And the control is supposedly massive.
Hugely far-reaching, according to Cooper, into the White House, State Department, Justice, CIA, the military, you name it. The claim is really broad, like almost every CIA director, most presidents since FDR, all members, and that the CFR essentially owns the major news outlets, employs the top journalists.
So the idea is the CFR tells the government what to do, not the other way around.
That's the core assertion.
And this is where the whole alleged alien connection loops back in, isn't it? Eisenhower and this secret group, Majesty 12?
Or Majority 12, yeah. Cooper claims Ike appointed 6 CFR executive members to this super-secret group.
The group handling the alien stuff.
Supposedly, yeah. And he says it also included 6 people from the executive branch who Cooper claims were also CFR members, plus 6 scientists from a adjacent scientific group.
Okay, so 19 people total, including Dr. Edward Teller.
That's the number Cooper gives, 19. And again, this whole part hinges on the idea that aliens are real and there's been contact.
Right. And the CFR itself, supposedly super secretive, like no note-taking, don't talk about meetings.
Forbidden, yeah. According to Cooper, you'd get terminated if you spilled the beans. It paints a picture of this incredibly tight-lipped organization pulling strings behind the scenes.
All driving towards this New World Order. So what does Cooper say this New World Order actually looks like?
Well, it's definitely not painted as a utopia. He argues this hidden power structure is pushing us towards a totalitarian socialist state, or maybe fascism.
But he's careful not to blame just one group, right?
He is. He explicitly says it's not just Nazis or Jewish people or communists or bankers, though he thinks individuals from those groups could be involved.
So it's presented as something broader, more fundamental.
Exactly, an underlying force at work. He points to the U.S. Constitution, with its checks and balances as designed protection against tyranny.
Yeah.
But he argues that system only works if the branches respect each other's power, and he believes that balance is being deliberately eroded.
Okay, and then he mentions Professor Huntington and this National Security Decision Directive 47 under Reagan. That sounds pretty important to his argument.
It really is. Cooper claims Huntington, who he links to the Trilateral Commission, another group often mentioned in these theories, basically argued that democracy and economic development were, outdated ideas.
Outdated, wow.
Yeah, and Cooper alleges those ideas then got baked into this NSDD 47 from 1982. Officially, it was about emergency mobilization preparedness.
But Cooper saw it differently.
He interpreted it as laying the groundwork for a secret government, a police state, something that could allow the Constitution to be suspended if there was a big enough emergency.
So in his view, it's the Illuminati ultimately pulling the strings, trying to take over the U.S. and fold it into this global order.
That's the picture he paints. And he really stresses, don't just blame one single ethnic group or religion or whatever. He thinks that misses the point.
The point being this bigger conspiracy for total control.
Yeah. He warns against those kinds of easy scapegoats while doubling down on his belief in this larger, overarching conspiracy, which then leads into some really disturbing claims about population control.
Yeah, this section was pretty unsettling to read. He talks about developing new diseases at Fort Detrick.
Under something called Project MK Naomi, yeah, for population reduction, supposedly targeting specific groups.
Which groups?
Cooper alleges the targets were Black, Hispanic, and homosexual populations. He then goes on to detail these alleged deliberate infections.
Like the smallpox vaccine in Africa.
In 1977, yeah, through the WHO, and then the hepatitis B vaccine trials in the U.S. in 78. He even names Dr. Wolf Smunis as, the mastermind behind the Hep B trials and the alleged release of AIDS.
These are incredibly serious allegations.
Extremely serious and unverifiable from our end, of course, but central to Cooper's narrative.
He also talks about reducing the population to workable levels.
Yeah.
And adopting a Chinese model.
That's right. He describes a future with, really strict limits on childbirth, harsh penalties if you have too many kids, much like China's one-child policy at the time.
And other methods, too.
Yeah, he throws a lot out there. Claims about U.S. tobacco fields being fertilized with radioactive waste to cause cancer. Seriously.
That's the claim. And deliberate releases of germs, viruses, radioactive leaks, toxic waste, all by the Army and CIA, he says, not just for testing, but specifically for population reduction.
It's a bleak picture of the future New World Order. Implants, getting rid of unproductive people.
Electronic or chemical implants, yeah. Eliminating the old, the sick, the handicapped, anyone considered unproductive. Abolishing private property. Suppressing religion unless it's state-approved.
Total control.
Pretty much. Even holding back technology and economic growth, forcing people to live more primitively.
But then there's a weird twist, isn't there? He suggests this awful future is somehow needed.
It's a strange part of the argument. He suggests that this New World Order, while it looks evil, is seen by the elite as very much needed for humanity's long-term survival, especially for, like, expanding into space.
So it requires a total shift in how people think.
A paradigm shift, yeah. It's presented as this really harsh ends justify the means calculation, however disturbing those means are. A deeply unsettling kind of utilitarianism. And he says the elite have backup plans. Earthquakes, war.
Even a messiah figure or staged alien landings, yeah.
Right.
Whatever it takes to trigger the change. And then there's that quote he attributes to Henry Kissinger.
The one about suffering and a better world for survivors.
Yeah, about how everything will change, many will suffer, but the new world order that emerges will be better for those left. Very stark.
So where does Cooper say he got all this?
He claims a lot of it comes from his time in naval intelligence between 1970 and 73, where he supposedly saw top-secret documents, this magic material.
Okay.
But, given he can't produce these secret documents, he does acknowledge that his conclusions have to be seen as a hypothesis.
Right.
He also floats that alternative idea. Maybe the whole alien story is a hoax, manufactured to create an enemy, push for that one-world government.
But he still believes the advanced tech is real. Anti-gravity craft.
He maintains that part, yeah. That the craft exist and humans are flying them. So even if the alien story is fake, the tech, he says, is not.
Let's shift a bit to Cooper's own story. He talks about how people reacted to him over time, doesn't he?
He does. He describes going from, speaking to small groups to having much bigger audiences later on.
What did he attribute that to?
His radio show, mostly, and his book, Behold a Pale Horse. He felt people were becoming more skeptical of official stories, more open to alternatives.
He even mentions President Clinton calling him dangerous.
Yeah, he claims Clinton named him the most dangerous radio host in America. Cooper seemed to take that as a kind of backhanded compliment, It's a sign he was making an impact.
And what was his advice for people who actually wanted to make a difference?
Pretty straightforward, really, he said. Understand the Constitution inside and out. And be willing to stand up and tell the truth as you see it, no matter what.
He also talks about the personal cost, right?
Yeah.
The impact on his family.
Yeah, he touches on that. Describes facing social isolation, serious money problems, and this constant fear of, government backlash.
Sounds like a heavy burden.
He portrays it as a major sacrifice. He said he hoped he'd be remembered like Paul Revere, someone who warned people about a threat to their freedom.
He often mentioned his background, too. Naval intelligence, years of research.
7 years in naval intelligence, 17 years of research, yeah. He used that to give weight to his claims, but importantly, he always told people, don't just believe me.
Right, investigate for yourself.
Exactly, check the evidence. He claimed a lot of it was actually out there in the public domain if you looked hard enough.
And he did leave the door open for the alien part being a hoax.
He did. He explicitly said intelligence agencies could pull off something like that. It remained a possibility in his view.
But he still pointed to things like UFO sightings.
Yeah, numerous sightings by people he considered credible witnesses, pilots, military personnel, and the existence of advanced tech, especially around Area 51, as evidence that something unexplained was going on.
He also made some really specific, very startling claims about the Kennedy assassination.
He did. Based on those documents he says he saw in naval intelligence.
What did he claim they said?
He stated quite bluntly that the documents said President Kennedy was killed by his Secret Service driver, William Greer.
Wow. And the alleged reasons?
Several. Kennedy supposedly ordered a stop to drug trafficking run by, Cooper alleged, the CIA. He planned to reveal the truth about aliens. He ordered the Treasury to print constitutional silver-backed money.
And wanted to disband the CIA.
That too. Cooper described having a really strong emotional reaction when he saw these documents, even left his post for a bit before deciding he had to share it.
Heavy stuff. This naturally leads into alien abductions, another theme that comes up a lot.
Right. Cooper mentions the reports people taken, medically examined, tissue samples, or ova-harvested. He asserts that this stuff is medically factual.
Okay. And then he pivots back to the idea of national sovereignty, and especially the Second Amendment. Why were they so important to him?
He saw them as the main obstacles to this new world order. He argued the goal was to destroy national sovereignty, get rid of the U.S. as we know it, and that the Constitution wouldn't be allowed to stand.
And the Second Amendment.
He believed the right to bear arms was the only thing truly stopping them, that its original purpose was to prevent government oppression, and that's why, in his view, there was such a push to take guns away.
He also talks about specific UFO evidence. Videos, reports.
Yeah, he mentions footage of a cigar-shaped craft over the Nevada test site as, rare visual proof. He talks about the cover-up of the whole phenomenon.
And references older ideas about using an alien threat to unite people.
Right, like a quote from John Dewey back in 1917 and the report from Iron Mountain. Both apparently suggested using an external threat like aliens to get humanity to unite, maybe through a big space program instead of war.
He mentions presidents seeing UFOs, too.
Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, he brings up their reported sightings, and he insists the U.S. has developed its own flying saucers, anti-gravity craft.
Flown out of places like Area 51.
Exactly. He claims he saw them himself, even includes a photo and a drawing in his book.
And that alleged Eisenhower meeting with aliens.
At Murak, which is now Edwards Air Force Base, back in '54, he cites a letter from someone named Gerald Light, who claimed he was there, saw 5 different types of alien craft, and these beings he called Etherians.
And this meeting supposedly led to a treaty.
That's the claim. A treaty involving things like non-interference, secrecy, tech exchange, limited abductions, but with memory wipes and even exchanging personnel.
Sounds like a sci-fi plot.
He actually draws parallels to the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind and mentions Dr. J. Allen Hynek, the UFO investigator who consulted on it.
10 underground bases.
Allegedly built under Native American reservations, Four Corners area, and also in Dreamland, another name for Area 51.
But then, according to Cooper, the treaty fell apart.
By 1955, yeah. He claims Eisenhower realized the U.S. had been tricked. The aliens supposedly broke the treaty, mutilated humans, and animals started showing up. Abduction lists weren't complete. Maybe the Soviets were involved somehow.
It gets pretty dark. Manipulation through secret societies, witchcraft.
He suggests the aliens might be manipulating humanity using all those things: secret societies, magic, the occult, even religion. Though he also acknowledges this could also be human manipulation using an alien narrative.
And he mentions specific government documents, NSC directives.
NSC 54122 and 5511, yeah. Supposedly related to studying and covering up the alien issue, concluding the public couldn't handle the truth, leading to secret funding.
And the claim about aliens needing glandular secretions.
Yeah, a particularly grim detail that they were using humans and animals for that.
So the government's plan, then, was to slowly prepare people. Through media.
According to Cooper, yes. Movies, radio, TV, a gradual acclimatization process to get ready for some kind of confrontation or reveal. He thinks that explains the rise in sightings and official UFO talk.
He also weaves in other conspiracies, right? Drugs, guns.
He alleges government involvement in importing drugs to create, like, a dependent underclass and encouraging illegal gun manufacturing to create fear and make people want gun control.
And Project Orion. School shootings.
A really disturbing claim that the CIA used mind control on mental patients to make them commit school shootings, specifically to fuel the anti-gun movement. Again, a very serious and unproven allegation from the source material.
Then he lays out this whole potential endgame scenario, martial law.
Yeah, a hypothetical. Terrorists get a nuke into the U.S. That becomes the pretext to suspend the Constitution, declare martial law. Dissidents get rounded up, put in existing camps. He claims they exist maybe as slave labor for space colonies. Media gets nationalized.
And he mentions a rehearsal for this.
REX-84 Alpha, an exercise in 1984, which he claims was practice for exactly that kind of scenario.
So he leaves you with these stark possibilities. Self-destruction, elite alien intervention, total deception.
Or just an unknown situation needing honesty, and always circling back to that possibility. Maybe the alien threat itself is the ultimate manipulation to get that one world government.
He also talks about cattle mutilations, crop circles.
Yeah.
Weird stuff.
Yeah, the cattle mutilations, he describes the classic signs. Precise cuts, no blood, missing organs, often near nuclear sites. He dismisses the official explanation, like coyotes.
In his theory.
He suggests it might be related to monitoring radiation leaks, noting the locations downwind from nuclear facilities. Crop circles in England, he briefly mentions, could be some kind of message.
And the suppressed technology idea comes up again, too.
Right. That tech exists that could give us longer lives, free energy, cure diseases, but it's deliberately held back. Why? Population control, according to him.
He cites some reports or articles.
Mentions an LA Times piece from '89 forecasting implants for behavior control. Also an FBIS report, Foreign Broadcast Information Service, supposedly detailing Soviet UFO crashes and recovered tech way beyond ours.
He rings up that Gerald Light letter again, too.
Emphasizing the 5 types of craft and the Etherians seen during Ike's alleged visit, he mentions the Jason group of scientists again, linked to things like the electronic barrier in Vietnam.
He acknowledges hoaxes, too, though.
Briefly, yeah. Mentions debunked photos, a French flying saucer. Recounts the story about Jackie Gleason supposedly seeing alien bodies shown to him by Nixon.
Presents alleged Air Force saucer designs.
Leaked info, he claims. And keeps coming back to Area 51, Groom Lake, the sightings there. Mentions the SR-71 Blackbird, the rumored Aurora spy plane.
Shows some classic UFO photos.
Like the one over Mount Rainier in 48. Even questions if some clouds, lenticular clouds, could be artificial, generated by tech. Claims documents say they can create cloud cover.
Always circling back to that core question. Is the alien story real, or is it a tool?
A tool to create fear, make people accept a one-world government for survival. He shares anecdotes, sightings by passengers, tourists, even in Vietnam.
Makes a strange claim about moon landing photos showing an atmosphere.
Yeah, that's in there. Recounts his own sighting of a weird fast-forming cloud, discusses drawings by a student with missing time, linking them to other abductee art and figures like John Lilly, who he connects to CIA mind control.
Introduces silent weapons for quiet wars.
And the idea that the elite view regular people as cattle, basically. He questions the flood of alien media. Is it to create a threat or maybe wake people up?
Mentions a Dr. Kurzweil, recruited to work with abductees.
Dr. Stephen J. Kurzweil, yeah. Allegedly recruited by CIA-linked figures, had bad experiences. It all feeds back into the warning, watch out for a staged alien threat.
And the Bush Sr. speeches.
He cites Marvin Fitzwater confirming President Bush personally added lines about an alien threat to speeches, including that famous quote, how quickly differences would vanish facing an alien threat, and asking if maybe they're already here.
Claims his book has documents about dismantling the Constitution. NSDDs.
Yeah, National Security Decision Directives. He talks about alleged moves towards a one-world government with the Soviets, CFR media control, a super-world government structure.
But again, insists the conspiracy is the Illuminati, not just one religion or political group.
Right. And Poulemans mentions an alleged push for Bush Sr. to declare a national emergency back then, which could suspend the Constitution.
So his final message seems to be, focus on the real stuff.
Kind of. He reiterates, maybe the aliens are a hoax, maybe not. But the technology is real, the move towards a totalitarian cashless state is real, and that's what people should focus on.
Shares more claims about media ownership, military teaching interdependence.
Yeah, CFR members owning media, military doctrines, pushing a one-world government as the solution to war, with space as the replacement outlet, poses the question, who speaks for Earth if aliens show up?
Uses the Tiananmen Square tank man as an example of individual power.
Right. Briefly mentions the Trilateral Commission Corps property registration efforts as steps toward control. Discusses using prophecies, Nostradamus, Revelation to manipulate people towards accepting the one world government.
And revisits abductions. Aliens are mind control.
Yeah. Are they real ETs or intelligence agencies using implants and psych tricks? He alleges links between some UFO figures and intel agencies, warns again about losing private property in the coming state.
Finally, he addresses a listener question about something coming out of the ocean.
His response basically boils down to, look, proving that was alien is hard. But the evidence for manipulation towards a one-world government, he claims that's much more solid.
And accuses the government of infiltrating UFO groups.
To control the information, yeah. Whether aliens are real or it's all a hoax, he claims the goal is suppression. He acknowledges there's disagreement, but insists the fight for truth continues.
Wow. That was a really deep dive into an incredibly intricate and often dark web of claims.
Yeah.
Thanks for walking us through all of that.
My pleasure. Yeah, the goal was really just to lay out the core arguments, the narratives that are presented in these sources you sent in, to show the connections Cooper and others make and highlight the main points of concern and speculation that come up again and again.
And it's just so crucial to remember, folks, that everything we've talked about today, it comes straight from the content provided by our listener.
Absolutely.
Neither of us, and not the show, is sitting here endorsing any specific viewpoint. It's really about understanding the ideas being presented.
And encouraging you to think critically about them.
Exactly. This stuff, it touches on some really fundamental questions, doesn't it? About trust, power, transparency, even how we understand reality.
It really does. Big questions.
So thinking about this whole complex tapestry of claims we've sort of laid out from these sources, what's the one aspect that you find maybe most compelling or perhaps most concerning? And, why might that be?
That's a good question to leave people with.
Definitely something to mull over after we wrap up here. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. We hope you'll share your own thoughts and maybe do some more digging on your own.